And we have Marco Rubio in charge. Good luck, Marco. Now, we know who to blame if anything goes wrong. I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But Marco Rubio's done a great job, and he wanted him out, and we go along with that. I would say that I'd have the Secretary of State handle it because I'm not really involved in that.
If he was telling the truth, if in fact he did not sign this thing, everything that followed, the deportation of these individuals was all illegal, was all null and void.
A visibly confused Donald Trump may have just totally screwed himself and his administration over as they attempt to desperately litigate their recent power grab. And bonus points, he finally made good on a promise to throw Marco Rubio under the bus in the process, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we had a couple of clips to look at here, but I want to start with this one, which kind of lays the situation out. Here's Donald Trump screwing himself and his administration over, throwing Marco Rubio under the bus, and the White House desperately attempting to paper over it in the process.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But Marco Rubio's done a great job, and he wanted him out, and we go along with that.
Moments later, Trump again deferred to Secretary of State Marco Rubio when he was asked if he could deport people using that same policy right now.
I would say that I'd have the Secretary of State handle it because I'm not really involved in that. But the concept of getting bad people, murderers, rapists, drug dealers, all of these are really some bad people out of our country. I ran on that. I won on that.
However, when it comes to this issue of signature or no signature, if you look at the proclamation invoking this wartime power over the weekend, it's on the White House's website. It is listed as a presidential action, and it reads, by the President of the United States of America. But even further than that, when you look at the version that is filed in the National Register, it bears President Trump's recognizable signature right there at the bottom. Now, given all of this, at 8:46 p.m. tonight, just a few minutes before we came on air here, the White House put out this statement. I'm going to read it to you in full. It says, President Trump was obviously referring to the original Alien Enemies Act that was signed back in 1798. The recent executive order was personally signed by President Trump invoking the Alien Enemies Act that designated Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization in order to apprehend and deport these heinous criminals.
Can we stop right there for just a second? So this is where, again, the White House is desperate to cover for Trump's senility. No, when Trump said he didn't sign it, what he meant was he wasn't alive in 1798. He didn't sign the original, Alien Enemies Act, right? Okay, well then why did he reference Marco Rubio? Marco Rubio wasn't alive back then to sign it either. So either you're confused, White House spokespeople, or Donald Trump is confused, or one or both of you are lying. It's a pretty stupid and weak explanation from a really stupid group of people, but we'll continue.
So they say Trump was very obviously referring to the original Alien Enemies Act that was signed back in 1798, even though that is not what the reporter asked him. Just let's listen to what the president himself said one more time.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But Marco Rubio's done a great job, and he wanted him out, and we go along with that.
I have two of my top legal sources here, CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig and retired judge Jill Convisor. Ellie, was the president obviously referring to this act of 1798?
Yeah, was he telling us that I'm not John Adams, the guy who signed it back in 1798? Here's why Donald Trump's statement earlier today, well, the obvious thing he was saying here is, I did not sign this proclamation that was used last week to deport these aliens. If that's true, if Donald Trump did not actually sign that proclamation, it's a big problem because the law specifically requires a proclamation by the president. The law says that the president has to make a public proclamation of the event. So if he was telling the truth, if in fact he did not sign this thing, everything that followed, the deportation of these individuals was all illegal, was all null and void. That's why they're trying to walk it back with this ridiculous attempt to walk the tightrope.
I mean, Judge Boasberg.
So that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Again, a visibly confused Donald Trump just totally screws himself and his administration over as this very issue is being litigated before Judge Boasberg. Boasberg, whom Trump has called for impeachment because Boasberg has ruled in ways that Trump doesn't like. this is hilarious. He just totally sandbagged himself and his administration. And in a roundabout way, again, threw Marco Rubio under the bus. We'll get to that in just a second. But again, to really make the point clear, this presidential proclamation has to be signed by the sitting president, in this case, Trump. This is not something you can outsource to another administration official. Whatever legal power, legal impetus that you have to try to conduct these unilateral deportations without due process, I might add, whatever strength is there derives entirely from the president having signed this proclamation invoking an ancient and rarely used Alien Enemies Act emergency powers. Again, this is essential. I want to play this one more clip to just really drive it home.
Christy, what is the significance of him signing it, him not signing it, if it was an auto pen potentially?
Well, his explanation to start with doesn't make a lot of sense because he not only said he didn't sign it, but he said he had other people handling it for him, I believe. Well, if he was talking about the 1798 proclamation, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So yeah. I share your skepticism that, in fact, he was talking about his executive order and not the 1798 order. But the law is clear that the president actually needs to sign off on any executive orders related to to invoke the proclamation. So whether or not that's by auto pen or not, I don't see as an issue as long as he's signing it or directing somebody else to have his signature on the proclamation. I think that's all that's required. This auto pen issue is an issue that the Trump.
But I also want to point that out since they mention auto pen, right? Because you may recall that Donald Trump, again, just irony of ironies, as a reminder that Donald Trump recently tried to concoct this scandal involving President Biden. Remember, this is what he said. The pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them. But more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, all those on the Unselect Committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. So what's hilarious is Donald Trump has just stepped on a rake that he himself dropped in front of him, because what he is suggesting is that he is guilty of the very thing he accused Biden of, which is being so negligent, so laissez-faire, that he actually did not give the sign-off or approval on a document that he has to sign, or that he has to approve of explicitly, even if he does it by auto pen. Do you see the irony here? Do you see the hypocrisy? It's hilarious. So if what Trump says is true, that he didn't sign it, that he had nothing to do with it, then that means that, again, whatever very thin legal pretext Trump has to conduct these mass deportations unilaterally without due process, he just totally undermined himself. He stripped his own administration of what little protection they had to litigate this in the court. I also want to point out, since he mentioned Marco Rubio repeatedly, of what Donald Trump happened to say just a few weeks ago regarding Marco Rubio during his joint statement to Congress. Do you remember this moment?
And we have Marco Rubio in charge. Good luck, Marco. Now, we know who to blame if anything goes wrong.
He said it to his face. We know who to blame if anything goes wrong. Well, things have gone wrong. Indeed, not only have you had the deportations of people without due process, not only do you have a judge ordering these things, a temporary restraining order on these things, a temporary block that Trump then defied by concluding the deportations regardless, not turning the planes around when he was supposed to, and sending these migrants to El Salvador. And then it turns out that apparently some of the people whom he sent to El Salvador had no criminal record whatsoever, and some of them had entered the country legally, not illegally, legally. The whole thing is a total disaster for Trump, and it sure seems like he's setting up Marco Rubio to be scapegoated exactly as he told Marco Rubio he would. Just to, again, put a fine point on this, the Washington Post has a good article about this. Trump said he didn't sign the Alien Enemies Proclamation, so who or what did? Did Trump misspeak? Is he trying to deflect a decision under heavy legal scrutiny onto Marco Rubio? Trump told reporters Friday evening that he did not sign the controversial proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act to quickly deport migrants his administration says are violent gang members from Venezuela. So what did happen? Did Trump misspeak? Is he trying to deflect responsibility for a decision under heavy legal scrutiny by suggesting he was merely following through on an idea proposed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio? And if he didn't sign it, who or what did? Trump's signature appears on the digital image of the proclamation available for viewing with the Federal Register, the government repository of official documents. And White House Communications Director Stephen Chung said late Friday that Trump did personally sign the proclamation. So again, it's entirely possible that Trump is lying or just visibly confused, right? He is a profoundly stupid person and an inveterate liar, so either of these explanations are equally valid, it seems. But rather than say the president misspoke, Chung said that Trump's claim that he didn't sign it was a reference to the law passed 227 years ago and not the more recent document, an explanation immediately questioned on social media, given that reporters had specifically asked about the newer proclamation. Many of the migrants deported have no criminal records in the United States. The administration and court records said in court records that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement investigated each migrant sent to El Salvador to verify their ties to the Tren de Aragua gang. Robert Sina, an acting ICE field director, wrote in a court filing that those efforts can include reviewing surveillance data, testimonies from victims, or an admission of membership by the accused. He acknowledged that many of those deported under the act do not have criminal records in the U.S., but that, quote, does not indicate that they pose a limited threat. The confusion over Trump's signature prompted some speculation that perhaps the document was signed using an autopen, a machine that uses real ink to duplicate a human signature. The Justice Department has said the autopen is a legal way to sign official presidential documents, but Trump has ridiculed the practice as inauthentic. Many administrations, including Trump's, have relied on an autopen, although the current president says he uses it, quote, only for very unimportant papers. Over the past week, Trump has criticized former President Joe Biden for using an autopen on serious government matters, declaring the documents he used it on, quote, null and void, including official presidential pardons of members and staff of the House committee that investigated the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. So, this is hilarious. Irony, hypocrisy, being hoisted by your own petard, stepping on a rake that you dropped in front of you in the first place. A visibly confused Donald Trump seems to either, again, be demonstrating senility on camera or lying to the press and throwing Marco Rubio under the bus either which way, exactly as he promised. This is hilarious, and we'll see how it implicates the future case and the future litigation on this particular invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. So stay tuned. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.